Welcome to our first SupplierEdge webinar. We are extremely excited to have our first event really be veteran focused, where we're going to be today diving into understanding how veterans can leverage their veteran-owned status to get into corporate and government contracts. I don't want to, spend a ton of time here going over. I really want to dive in. We have such a wonderful guest today, a guest speaker, that I'm going to let him spend the vast majority of the time speaking. But I thought I would just quickly say that, give you a little intro. My name is Dustin Luther. I'm the Director of Engagement at Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corp. And our team has been working really hard to help educate business owners of all types, really, how they can get into and leverage supplier programs lately. That's one of the projects that's been kind of near and dear to my team. So with that said, we have a real community on LinkedIn that we've recently started. As of yesterday, we started promoting it with the launch of this SupplierEdge webinars. And we're going to be asking a lot of questions there. If you don't have an intro, if you haven't got an introduction or a welcome to that LinkedIn community, we're going to put a link right in the chat here, so you'll be able to see that, and you can either ask questions during Scott Davidson's talk here in the chat, or we'll be monitoring the LinkedIn as well. We'll also be posting resources as he mentions them, such as links and other things. We've already posted on that community the slide deck that we're using today. So if you afterwards want to review any of the things here that Captain Scott Davidson is going to be talking about, all of it is posted on that LinkedIn community that we're calling SupplierEdge community. So please check that out as well. With that said, I really wanted to have a warm and strong welcome to Captain Scott Davidson. I met him at a procurement event in Washington, D.C. in the spring, so a good 6 months ago maybe or so. And he had a crowd around his table there as he just had lots of different people wanting just to get information from him. And he just was such a great speaker. I was immediately attracted to him and started to ask my own questions. And we realized that it should be wonderful to have him come on this show. So he is the managing principal of VETS GSA and has an incredible amount of experience in helping people leverage their veteran-owned status to get government contracts. So couldn't be more thrilled to have him come on here. And with that said, Scott, thank you so much. And I want to welcome and really turn this presentation over to you.
Thanks, Dustin. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for the great introduction, of course. I don't have much more to add to it, except that we're excited to be working with Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corp to be able to put out this information. With that being said, we'll jump right into the presentation. Quick overview of the agenda. Today, I just will say not so much reading off the slide, but I'll be giving the information as best as I can as far as just my experience that we have. This is, like Dustin had said, very central focus to business owners who are service-disabled and veteran-owned small business owners who are looking to enter into the government procurement work, as a contractor or a vendor. It also is kind of going to give you some guidance as far as what may be the best choice for your company, and also potentially give you some information as to where you need to start steering some of the business and focus of your business. To see who's the more receptive agencies out there. And then, of course, we'll finish up with, I think, some interesting numbers that people should see from the last FY 2014 contract spends, so they can see where the set-asides were going, who the agencies were that did the most buys, and just, again, some other pertinent information that may help you in some of your future capture efforts as you're pursuing work with the federal government. All right, so we'll go to Slide 4. Just a quick slide, veteran business landscape. This is something that's been circulated a little bit through the SBA and some other places, but I think it's some great information because it kind of gives you a nice demographic representation of what our community looks like right now. Of course, it's easy to say that we are an important force within the American economy. As you see, currently veterans have 2.5 million small businesses, and of course 9% of those firms, or a total of 9% of all the small firms in the U.S. A little bit of a smaller demographic, of course. The 200,000 veteran-owned small businesses are actually service-connected or service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. 1 out of 6 veterans start a business, which gives you a good idea of the type of entrepreneurship spirit that's alive in current veterans. And then my last piece I added, of course, that veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses are actually the only socioeconomic status that you can earn. Everything else would either be through something, of course, that was either by birth or some other type of affinity, but it's going to be directly from something that you only can earn those 2 statuses. Okay. What I want to start with is the question I get asked the most, regardless of all the other items that we do provide to people. The question that really people come down to me and say is, you know what, Scott, they go, what do you need as far as the programs and all the certifications and things that you require? What is out there? Does it benefit me to go through the Department of Veterans Affairs certification for work, or do I just do the self-certifying program that's just done through your SAM record through sam.gov? I guess what I'll do is I'll give you the best piece is, yes, I mean, the highlight of the program is that both programs do provide you with subcontracting opportunities, obviously. You do, as you establish eligibility, whether it's through the CVE program or through SAM, you're then eligible to bid on whatever your qualifying factors are for each one of the businesses. With that being said, the most important piece with this is what exactly does it entail? What would be the choice that you want to make as far as, do I go through this a tremendous amount of paperwork, and it's very time consuming to do the CVE certification through the VA, and are those benefits there? What I can say just through experience, and I assisted many vendors, service-disabled veterans and veteran-owned small businesses to get through that process since it's been the inception of how they changed their certification process at the VA. I will say that, and it's important to know that only the VA, if you want to contract with the VA, that is the only current agency that requires the CVE certification. All the other agencies in the federal government only require you to do self-certification through SAM. So you have to make the decision is your target that you're looking for as far as to sell your goods or your services, is it going to be a hard target with the VA as far as, yes, they buy what I sell on this type of record, as far as whatever it is that you're going to offer, is that going to be my target? Do I want to sell directly to the VA? Or am I I want to be diverse, DOD, Department of Homeland Security, etc. It really just depends on that focus. Obviously, if you are going to be a medical supply company, I would say, well, most likely you're going to want to touch into the VA clinics and hospitals across the United States, and yeah, that's probably a pretty good spot for you, even if you're doing some type of medical service, etc. But again, keep that in mind. Yes, the VA does buy a lot of different things, but as we go deeper into this presentation, I give a breakdown of the actual buy. I give a breakdown of what each agency does, so you can get a better idea of what it looks like. And again, is this strategically the smart thing to do as a company to say, okay, I'm going to get both of these. I want my CVE certification from the VA, and I'm already self-certified. Again, the VA has this program. I'm not going to dissuade you from doing it. I'm just going to say as a strategic decision for a company, just make sure that if you're going to go through the exercise that it's going to be worth to have that tool in your toolbox, where you just need to self-certify on the other end through SAM. This just gives a quick, and again, this presentation is available for you, so this kind of gives you a quick overview of what requires what with self-certification or not. And again, this can be available online for you to take a look at. Okay. Just a quick overview. If you're not familiar, again, most companies will understand this, but we want to make sure. One of the biggest pieces here is the second bullet. People don't realize that a veteran with a 0 to 100% disability rating is actually eligible to self-represent as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. The one question I always get is the 0% piece. Just real quick, if you have been evaluated by the VA, and you have a letter that states it's a 0% service-connected disability and names what it is, yes, you are eligible. So I just want to make sure that as people scratch their head and look at me all the time, and then we go ahead and we point back to where, you know, the exact regulation where it states that. But yes, you can find all that information on va.gov and some other, you know, any other website that is reliable when it comes to, you know, SBA, when it comes to service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. But I do want to make sure that everybody understands that, you know, you've had to be honorably discharged, and anything, and then of course, if you have a 0 to 100%, that's for a service-disabled veteran. If you're an honorably discharged veteran, of course, you can always go ahead and self-certify for your veteran-owned small business status. And again, just some additional pieces. You know, the NAICS code will always show you exactly where you need to be for what the small size is for your standard of you know, regardless of, you know, for business size. The other piece, of course, is that 51% of the business must be directly and unconditionally controlled by one or more service-disabled veterans. And in the case of being a VOSB, same thing. The company has to be 51% directly and unconditionally controlled by a veteran. So that there's no leeway on that at all. That is exactly what would happen. Even when you self-certify, understand that you're still subject to review by the SBA or any type of certifying contracting official to ensure that that is correct. So I do encourage you to make sure that if you have multiple partners or multiple, you know, investors that have certain type of control in your operating agreement, I would always say to make sure that you look at that and it's very clearly defined, because it will be reviewed if it's ever challenged in any type of procurement award protest. So what are the contracting advantages for veteran-owned small businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses? Simply, of course, it sets, you know, the set-aside awards for contracts. You know, once a contracting officer can determine that at least two businesses can provide or fulfill whatever the requirement is for product or service, the benefit, of course, is that then you have a much smaller pool that you're challenging against when it comes to your proposals. That, of course, is going to be, you know, what is, I mean, that I always like to see it as the best value for everybody. It's the easiest thing, at least, to challenge somebody on any type of proposal than going to, you know, if it's just a small business set aside, then of course the actual, you know, the competition is much greater. Award can be made at a fair market price. That's an important piece to understand. Fair and reasonable pricing, you got to be within a range. Most of the time, they're going to understand in most cases, especially if you're a product reseller for things of that matter. They understand that the OEM is going to probably have either the best price or the lowest price, but there's a range that they have established that's acceptable in most cases. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're a product reseller. Services, same thing. I mean, you do have a little bit more leeway, but again, it's going to be, you need to be considered something within a fair and reasonable range of what the independent government cost estimate was. And then, of course, the best part, sole source awards can be made to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses and veteran-owned small businesses if you can satisfy whatever the requirements are that are going to be put forth by the contracting officer. And, of course, you know, it's $6 million for any type of manufacturing award, and then $3.5 million for all other procurements. Those are the limitations on awards. You cannot go higher than those. You can go lower. Those are the ceiling thresholds. Just want to bring up quickly, so if people are familiar, if you do happen to start the team, one of the pieces I always like to bring up here when it comes to, especially if there's set-asides, because we just spoke about set-asides, understand that, you know, in most of the cases, you have to be doing the majority of services when it comes to the performance of work. We don't have to go over this whole chart here. Again, it's available to you. But just understand that the majority of work has to be performed by you. There are certain nuances that are allowed, but understand what each one of those mean per the contract. And just make sure that everything is solid when you do anything in writing about work share. Because, again, if it's ever protested, it can be, you know, it will be verified by the contracting officer through certified payrolls and other means of audit. And I just want to make sure that you understand that there is a limitation on what can be performed if you are underneath that set-aside rule and you're trying to, you know, if you team with someone who is not a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. And again, we just touched on that again, and not to reiterate, but the biggest piece here, of course, is for teaming partners, I understand that you would need a total solution sometimes in some of the roles, and that's a great approach to have. Just make sure that each of your responsibilities and work share are clearly mapped out in your teaming agreements and your subcontract agreements. Make sure that you're aware of any subcontracting limitation that's been flowed down through that contract, and that you actively are monitoring those work shares. Reach out to small business liaison officers at all the large businesses which you wish to work with. We do have a link at the end of the presentation that actually provides you a direct link to every large business with a subcontracting plan in the United States. It's a great resource to use and have, so if anybody falls into your purview of service or product you're selling, I would encourage you to go ahead and take a look at those. And again, those resources are free, among other things that I provided, that you have some great spreadsheets and data that you can use. And of course, make sure that you have a solid capability statement and presentation ready to provide at any time when you reach out to those small business liaison officers. Okay. Again, certain things here, we can kind of glance over this because I want to try to get into the bulk of what we're about to do, but just certain exclusions to the Veteran-Owned Small Business Program and the Service-Enabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Program. What that means is that they have to, the contracting officers have to check a list first before they go and say they're going to solicit from the following two sources. And the list that we have here clearly demonstrates what each pieces are or where they would go first. Most of the time, these cannot fulfill certain items, but again, you'll see through, just through experience and time and some of the information we provide, there will be opportunity for you. If you go on FedBizOps every day or different things like that, you'll see set-asides, on a frequent basis. But again, that could be for, we can delve into that perhaps on another webinar. Okay. All right. This is what I wanted to focus on, so everybody kind of see where the dollar amount are going to and how it's being kind of set aside. I'm actually going to skip to the next slide because it's a little. There we go. This is a better representation. Take a look. So these are the top 10 federal agencies last in FY 2014, which ended in September recently. The important piece here is to take a look. In the last column, the SEVO, with Service-Enabled Veteran-Owned Small Business, you can see the spend of the agencies. So if you take a look at who made their goal, who did it, it's kind of obvious, but so the Department of Defense, of course, would be your first choice depending on where you want to go and sell, because it's $3.1 billion was set aside for service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses in those types of competition. They didn't meet their goal. So the reason being, most of the time, is you really want to pursue and find out, under the Department of Defense, you want to see what programs didn't meet their goal, and those are the programs you probably want to be contacting if you can sell something to them as far as services, because you have to. It's a very big push for the administration to ensure these agencies are meeting their goal. A lot of the time, though, the issue really stands that they can't find, or they don't have people who respond to sources sought or any other type of piece there that they can find service-disabled veteran-owned small business or veteran-owned small business to satisfy the requirement. So as you look through, yes, if you go down a list here, Department of Energy missed, Department of Health and Human Services missed, you would want to take a look at, of course, the VA made 18%, as they should, because they are the VA. But also keep in mind then, if you're going to be competing against more veterans at the VA level through that certification. So that's just something, again, you got to make sure that you are going to have something to sell to them. Department of Homeland Security did a great job at $662 million, so they're veteran-friendly. And so does the Department of Justice, Agriculture, Commerce, and the General Services Administration. This is a great breakdown of where at the start, and we'll have some more detail here in a second, but at the minimum, you're going to want to look at these agencies, actually at the top 10, because again, NASA, Health and Human Service, Energy, even Defense, these are the ones who have failed to meet their goals, and these are the ones that you can help assist. They just don't know you exist. So this is where you reach out to small business liaison officers, program people, things of that nature, to get noticed and understand. The other thing I always tell people is that if you see a source is sought, make sure you answer it, especially when you state your business size, so everybody understands ahead of time that they do have the ability to solicit it as a set-aside to service-disabled and veteran-owned small businesses. And we just talked about 4 of the top 10 agencies is failed to meet the set-aside goal, which means it should be prime target picking for vendors to go after those particular agencies. All right, this is where I wanted to show. So DoD, of course, being the largest of the overall spend for the federal government, they have the biggest budget to pull from when it comes to the set-aside for veteran-owned and services-able veteran-owned. So if you take a look, again, 2.21%, their goal was 3, they missed it, but they did, there's $3.1 billion that should have been set aside. One of the things you want to look at here is simply, best thing is look at the top 5 states, Virginia, California, Maryland, Texas, and Alabama. So, I mean, target-rich environment, of course, is going to be the Washington, D.C., the Mid-Atlantic area, because that's where the most money flows through. And then, of course, the other ones are far and few between, but that's where you should be at least looking for to target. And then you couple that with what are the 5 top products sold, as you can see, number 1, engineering and technical services in the billion, 1.6 billion mark. And then, of course, fuel oils being the other piece there. But the big takeaway is the fact is that if you look at it, services where 4 out of the 5 items that are being bought in bulk are the top items being sold to the federal government, with fuel oils being the number 2 and only the one only place over there that they're selling a product in that top 5. So it's something to at least keep in mind. Again, where you want to focus your capture efforts, this would probably help you and make a good decision or smart strategic decision as well. Maybe, we should refocus our efforts into different programs into the Department of Defense. And if I should be looking into Virginia area, et cetera. Okay. The one other piece there was that everyone, I'm going to just kind of go back for a second. If you look on the bottom, the types of contracts, understand where the government's going, look at the major disparity between firm fixed price and then anything else. It's 17, it's 4 times the amount of what a cost plus fixed fee is. That also should help you understand about certain things about maybe, what type of work that's going to be performed in the future. Understand that that's the way the government is going for a long time. It's going to continue to go that way, especially with sequestration, continuing resolutions, and all the great things with budget cuts recently. The expectation will be, of course, that firm fixed price will be the bulk of any type of work that you see in the future, simply because of the fact that it's the risk falls on the contractor themselves. And then it's just going to be the preferred method. Even time and material, cost reimbursable, those types of contracts will eventually dwindle down to very small amounts, and the bulk will always be firm fixed price. Okay. So here's some additional tools I just wanted to kind of throw out there. I get a lot of questions, of course, because the nature of the business we do. So for additional tools that you should look at just in general, besides having the CVE certification, if you're going to do work with the VA, I would always look at, a GSA schedule for your company. Some of the bullet points that you see the majority of, $40 billion a year flows through the GSA schedules each year. That continues to, it ebbs and flows a little bit. Usually it's going to be in the high billion-dollar range like that. So the bottom line is 10% of all government needs were procured through GSA contracts. That's something that you should, again, should always be, it's not a silver bullet solution, but it's definitely something that should be in your toolbox when it comes to working or trying to procure anything with the federal government. And then, of course, you see there was more than 19,000 GSA schedule contracts in 2014, and 80% of all GSA schedule holders are small businesses. And they represent 36% of the sales. Although that's a disparity towards a large business, it's still going to be, in the billions of dollars that are being procured through the GSA schedules that are, for open competition only for people who have the schedule. And then just a quick upload. I mean, just if you didn't know, GSA schedule is a 20-year contract. It's a 5-year base with 5-year options. They got evergreen clause. Actually, it goes on forever for that matter, because I've recently done option renewals at the 20-year for several of our clients, and it just gets renewed for the 20 years. So the contract would go in perpetuity as long as you meet the requirements. And of course, the best part, unlimited ceiling. It's determined at the contract level if anything else changes. These are the links we talked about. I know Dustin has placed those links in the group. And
yes, I was going to say that I know it doesn't show up. You can't click on Ready Talk here, but we're going to, if they're not there already, we're going to end up putting all those links on a thread there on that LinkedIn community. So please join. And there's some great stuff here. I'll let you describe the links themselves, but they definitely will be there.
Okay, yeah, and thank you, Dustin. I appreciate that. Yeah, bottom line is, if you look at, like we talked about earlier, prime contractors list with all small business subcontracting plans. That's on a national level. Anybody who's currently contracting that's a prime contractor with the federal government as a large business, they are listed with their points of contact on this spreadsheet that we've provided. And it gives the direct small business liaison officer's name for each one of those companies. So if you have a company that you think you can provide some great service or product to for reseller, you would want to contact those companies and go ahead and work through that piece. But yeah, we provide those, and again, just clearly state what you're offering, that type of presentation. The next great piece that we put up there, GSA schedule set aside opportunity forecast matrix. So for 2015, this actually provides all of the current opportunities that are going to be set out for solicitation for small business set-asides for the next year. And very descriptive, gives you down to the, all the depth of services being offered, who the solicitor is, and even gives you points of contact. So that's something that would be good for your forecast models or anything that you're doing for strategic planning. And then, of course, the SBA subcontractor directory called Subnet. I would take a look at that. That's a great program. It actually, if you sign up there and you become vetted, companies, large businesses go in there and they search for people to do subcontracting opportunities. They will contact you. You can also see companies will post requirements on there to answer. So you would take a look at Subnet. Subnet's is a great program to look at and something that you should be aware of. And then the remaining pieces, the small business programs, I just gave you just quick links to if you're interested in contacting their their small business liaison officers from the federal agencies. They can give you a wealth of knowledge and information, direct you to the right programs to speak to. All their contact information are on those pages. And then, of course, the last piece I always like to do, because we do provide a lot of support for them, is out of Syracuse University, Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans with Disabilities. It's a wonderful program that's provided to them. If you qualify as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, you may want to take a look at this. I would just go to the website and take a look at the courses. It's no charge to the veteran, and it does provide outstanding tools and support to help grow your business with classes, on-site classes at Syracuse and other universities around the United States. And it's a worthwhile program to take a look at.
Well, Scott, you had so many great links there. I wanted to mention just one thing before we open it up to Q&A. Which is, this is, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is our first SupplierEdge event. Next week, we're going to be talking with a woman who's helped women business owners understand how they can leverage that status to get into corporate and government contracts. We have companies like Dell and Amgen and Hilton and Delta all scheduled to talk about their specific supplier programs, either their supplier diversity programs or sometimes it's just getting into the retail supply chain and those kinds of things. But if any of these topics are of interest to you, please consider going to dnb.com/supplier where you can register for events in the future. And then one last thing, Scott, I'd like to ask you before we even go into general Q&A. You've provided just an incredible wealth of information here, and it was utterly educational. But I would like to just ask you, what services do you provide specifically for businesses? I feel like you didn't give yourself that plug, and thank you for keeping it utterly educational. But I would like to know how you can help somebody out.
Well, Vets CSA, we are a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, of course. We provide full turnkey GSA schedule services, consulting services from writing GSA schedule proposals. We do high-end OIG supports for audits. We build all different types of compliance programs. We're a full turnkey proposal management firm. Anything related to writing proposals, full turnkey pricing, price to win, things of that nature. And again, we are very aggressive with our pricing for anybody in the veteran community. We do offer also multiple times a year with other organizations like the American Legion. We offer all different types of classes around the U.S. for veterans and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses to help them understand the GSA schedule. And I will just say this, if you do have the opportunity to attend we are giving several different classes for GSA schedules at the Department of Veterans Affairs Small Business Event in Atlanta this year, December 9th through the 11th. And again, of course, feel free to come by and I'll see if I can help you out. And that's all we have for the plugs for now.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much. It would be a shame not to get you to at least let people understand what the services you provide. So we have a few questions that came in here. We did kind of tell people it would only be half an hour and we're already 2 minutes over, so I don't want to take too much time, but let's go through a few of them, and then also I want to let people know that if they have additional questions, they should just ask them on that LinkedIn community, and we will make sure that their questions get answered. So for that, they can either go to LinkedIn and just search SupplierEdge, or I provided a link in the chat that if they click over, they can join there. So the first question, we got one yesterday actually from Twitter from somebody who goes by the Twitter handle K9Patrol, and he was asking, can my service-disabled veteran status get me city and county jobs besides feds?
So that's a good question. It depends. So when I say it depends, there are certain states that have service-disabled veteran-owned small business set-asides. Not all states have them. Even at the county jobs and the local jobs, you just have to do the research for the states. New York State is one of the better veteran-friendly communities where they have a very high service-disabled veteran-owned small business percentage set aside at the state level. So it's just a matter of looking at what state it is that could help you. But yes, absolutely, it will help you dependent upon the state.
So on a related note, one of the ways that I came into becoming familiar with the supplier diversity contracts and veteran status, kind of the importance of that, was through a Navy Gold Coast event that we've gone to a couple of years in a row that the Navy puts on to help some of their large primes get subcontracting opportunities with small business owners. We didn't talk too much about kind of corporate opportunities, but can you speak to that? I mean, I assume that the same status helps, can really help people with some of the large, especially in the military, the Raytheons and Boeings and Lockheed Martins and others. Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yes, by the FAR regulation, there is. So we kind of touched on it too a little bit, but every large business will have a subcontracting plan that they have to fulfill, and they are required. There's a thing called a good faith clause that's in those subcontracting plans that requires them to make every effort to fulfill their requirements. Their requirements will mimic what the national requirements are. So for this case, at the federal level, each of these large businesses, and we've given you the contact to go ahead and reach out to them, it's going to be 3% of their contracts, whatever it's going to be, has to also be set aside internally. So they have to come and provide opportunity to the small business, service-disabled veteran-owned or veteran-owned small business, of whatever procurement that they have been awarded. They have to actively demonstrate that they're out there trying to fulfill this requirement as well. So absolutely, go both ways with it. State and local, federal. You leverage your status, but the other status you want to leverage is talk to your to the list we gave you with the subcontracting plans. Go find those large businesses and let them know that you exist and that they can absolutely take advantage of whatever the requirement is. But they'll be able to meet and check their goals off too if they use you in whatever whatever capacity they need to.
It totally makes sense. And that link you provided was just awesome. I looked at it a couple of times now. It just links to an Excel file that's just got an incredible number of contacts and names and companies and everything else. So super, super useful. Again, we'll link to that from the LinkedIn community. I think that's the easiest way to share it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's wonderful. We've got a couple more questions here. There's one that's kind of on the positive side, and then one's the negative, and I want to bring them both together. So, are there any companies, any types of companies you're seeing that work really well, that tend to get contracts really easily, whether it be like companies providing security services or a certain type of product? And on the flip side, are there any veteran-owned businesses that tend to not do well in these contracting opportunities?
I think it's situation dependent. I think, quite honestly, it really, because I've seen successful service-disabled and veteran-owned small businesses of all sizes that sell all different types of things. It's really about, and it's kind of in a basic focus there. You just have to know exactly where you have to focus your searches and to the right agency, to the right group of people. I will say the biggest issue I see is that most people will shotgun blast and try to chase everything out there. And at the beginning, when you start out to be a business, yes, I understand, you see a lot of different opportunities. It should be what you really do qualify for, and you need to form those relationships. Going in blind, most of the cases don't work. We help a lot of businesses write proposals and develop business for them. And that's just not the way to do it, especially if they're service-disabled, veteran-owned, or veteran-owned small businesses. I think that, again, I don't know if there's trouble leveraging their status. It's just a matter of making sure that everybody's aware. There's, of course, a very big veteran, there's been a push since the wars and everything else that people are aware of the status, and people are trying to help. But just got to make sure you put that best foot forward so they understand what it is that you do have the status and that they can use it. I do see the other question real quick. Are there any requirements that have kept certified veteran certified business from getting contracts? Of course, if you breach your NAICS code size, if you get too big, you're no longer a small business, then you lose your status. Company ownership structure, same thing. If you're not, at least a minimum 51% of your business is controlled and operated by either a service-disabled veteran or veteran, you will not be, it'll be challenged, and it's actually, you fall into the illegal category of fraud, so you can't have that happen. Age of company has it doesn't have any type of effect, except if you're going to, for GSA schedules, you have to be at least 2 years in business. For other vehicles, you just have to have the past performance. So the age of company may hurt you because you don't have the past performance of the company just to perform on whatever they're looking for. Business credit status, of course, yes. If you have any type of bad liens, any type of things that are against you, that has to be self-certified in SAM, but it also comes up in your TIN and your DUNS number. So those types of things will have a negative effect on you when they do a check and they look at your SAM record.
This has all been so great. Thank you so much for all the wonderful information. There's more questions I'm seeing here, but I think we might just have to take those to the community, and we want to answer any and all of your questions. We really look forward to it, and this is just an incredible start. Thank you so much, Captain Scott Davidson, for bringing such great information for the community.
It was my pleasure, Dustin. I'm so glad we could participate here. And again, we look forward to helping people on the LinkedIn community so we can answer any of the questions. Feel free to answer there. And we'll work with, we want to thank Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corp for putting this on for everybody. Hoping they got something out of it today.
We sure did. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone else. We look forward to connecting with you on future events. Thanks again.